just missed one right there. Missed another one. A lot of times these trout will, when they bite, they don't get the whole worm in their mouth. Their mouth doesn't really work like a sunfish or a black bass. When they, they feed, when they open their mouth, they create a vacuum, and basically it creates a lot of suction, whereas trout doesn't really do that, work that way. So you miss a lot of them on these Texas rig worms and bottom baits like this. Typically, Chattahoochee bass, when they bite a worm, they'll hold on to it. Unless if they're really small, they may not get a full finesse worm. They may not be able to get the entire worm in their mouth. So if you bite an inch off the worm, usually you can get some of those 5 and 6 inch fish that you would otherwise miss. I just had another trout. Just missed a trout. Trying to see what kind of trout we're dealing with here. It's probably a rainbow trout, I can just about guarantee. I just want to see how big they are. They're usually pretty good size like this one. It's a pretty nice trout. Not a giant or, but there he goes. You don't want to keep these trout out of the water too long. I see a lot of guys on YouTube that handle these fish for way too long. And if you don't catch many trout, that's understandable, but if you're going to target trout, you really need a net, first of all, and it needs to be wet before you net the fish, and you don't really want to keep the fish out of the water for more than a few seconds. Otherwise, especially in the summer, they're probably not going to survive that kind of time out of the water. All right, there may be some more trout in that hole, but I'm not after trout. So I'm moving on, looking for bass. That was probably a bass right there. Really, these trout, they're not native, like I said before. In some cases, they are able to reproduce, and the offspring are then considered wild. But these trout are native to the Pacific streams that drain into the Pacific Basin. That means creeks and rivers that basically drain into the Pacific Ocean. So that's North America, west of the Continental Divide, or Asia. You know, Russia has rainbow trout, native trout. Our streams, these are cool water streams. They're not cold water streams. Trout are a cold water species. Cold water streams are fed by melting snow from glaciers or snow on top of mountain ranges that melts throughout the summer. That keeps the stream cold, so that's why they're classified as cold water streams. Our streams, we don't have that in the southeastern United States, so these are considered or classified as cool water streams. And sunfish are native to all these streams. The trout are not, and in many cases, the trout are actually detrimental to the native species. Really surprised that cast did not produce a fish. All right. Oh. Let's go on here. That's really why I prefer the Texas rig over like a Ned rig that you see a lot of guys using on YouTube. Texas rig you can throw just about anywhere, skip it, and you can get it back. Whereas that Ned rig, the hook is exposed, obviously, and that allows you to use lighter line if you want, with the hook exposed like that. You can also use lighter tackle. You don't need much backbone to set the hook with the hook exposed like that. I can even, and really, once you have enough current, the Ned rig really, it doesn't, the whole point of using the Ned rig is to get that dragging action, so that the lure shakes, or when you drag a Ned rig on a rocky or gravel, even sand bottom, the tail of the soft plastic really vibrates as the jig head skips along the bottom from friction, or just, and really with current you don't get that. It's just the Ned rig in a stream with current, it's just gonna roll, it's just gonna, just like a Texas rigged worm, it's just basically just as it washes along the bottom, it just tumbles. So, you might as well use a lure that's weedless, So that's why I'm not a big fan of the Ned rig in the river, even though it will catch a lot of fish, but so will a Texas rig at the end of the day. I guess if you don't have a lot of experience setting the hook with a Texas rig, the Ned rig is a lot easier to hook and catch a fish, just because the hook is exposed like that. You just apply some tension, you still have to set the hook, but it's not like, you have to drive the hook through any plastic, which is the case with the Texas rig. But, you can put that Texas rig just about anywhere and get it back if a fish doesn't eat it. And also with that exposed hook, hitting as it tumbles along the bottom, it's going to hit rocks. So your hook point is really going to take a lot of abuse, and you may in fact lose more fish that way with a dull hook, just from that exposed hook hitting rocks constantly as it tumbles in the current. But anyway, that's my rant on the Ned rig for now. Ned rig is great for flat water lakes. Not so much, well, it'll catch fish in a stream, don't get me wrong. A Texas rig is just more efficient and a better choice, I think. But that's my opinion. I've been using the Texas rig a long time, so just had a hit right there. Sometimes if I stop talking mid-sentence, it's because I'm either getting a bite or I'm trying to determine if I have a fish or not. I don't really like to gut hook fish, so I try to set the hook as soon as possible. I really don't wait to set the hook. There are a few rare occasions where I might wait, but that's 99% of the time. I set the hook as soon as I feel any kind of, detect any kind of fish on the other end of my line. I'm setting the hook instantly. That was probably a Chattahoochee bass. I was half convinced it was a trout, so I did not set the hook with authority. I'm also still trying to figure out how to set the hook with this chest cam. It's kind of in the way. I see a lot of guys on YouTube miss fish and stuff, and I always just laugh, like most people probably do. And oh my, I can't vote. There's another trout, stinking trout. Oh, this one is a little larger, I think. I don't know if you guys, if you look up the river, there's a trout feeder hanging there. I'm probably not supposed to even be here, but I'm targeting bass, not trout, so if anyone gives me any grief, that's my story and I'm sticking to it. Okay, I don't really want to fight this fish any longer than necessary. I am gonna kind of horse it in because I don't want to, like I said, I'm not here for the trout. I don't want to hurt the trout. I want to, unhook this fish and move on